Shooters and reloaders out there, Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the hot lead zone. And today we're going to test the new Lee Auto Drum powder measure as it pertains to progressive presses like our Dillon 550B and also using flake powders like Unique. Now this of course is our fine Dillon 550B progressive reloading press, and it has the Dillon powder measure that sits right on top there, that's installed in the Dillon expanding die and powder die. And the way it works is there's a case underneath the powder die, and there's a linkage here that joins the powder measure with the station of the press. So when you activate that, notice that the slide of the powder measure is activated. You see there? That just threw a charge. And then that connecting bar will reset the measure for the next case. And we would then advance the shell station index to the next case so that we don't double charge. This Dillon powder measure is something of an engineering marvel, and you see it's got a large capacity powder hopper on top. And this has served me well for many years, going all the way back 35 years. Now there was a previous design that used a spring to return the powder measure, but this is actually a better one. It's an improvement upon their original design. What we want to do is test the Lee Auto Drum powder measure and see how well it will work in place of the Dillon powder measure. Now this new Lee Auto Drum doesn't require a linkage to go to the station of the press, so there's no need for connector bars. Indeed, there's no need for a chain even when we have the disconnector removed, so that the advantages of the quick change drums can be realized. We don't have any quick change drums in the current Dillon powder measure. So we simply remove the powder measure and we go ahead and remove the die. Where this changes the internal part. You see that has the neck expander mouth flarer right there. And they just change just by dropping different one in. These powder through dies or powder measure dies are universal for all of their inserts. But we take that out. We'll just go ahead and leave that together. So we go ahead and take the Lee powder measure and the 9mm expander die and powder through die, and we go ahead and thread it into the press. And it threads right in. It clears the primer assembly and everything. Now we want to run a case up there and get the proper neck expansion and any desired mouth flaring. So we thread that Lee die down until we get the proper adjustment there. So we adjusted the neck expander mouth flaring to be just enough to allow a 9mm bullet to enter the case. And then we go ahead and tighten down this adjustment. So there you see the Lee Auto Drum powder measure installed in the 550B press. And notice that it went right in there without interfering with anything like the primer tube or anything. It just went right down onto that. So it installed readily. And now we've got it adjusted so that the 9mm case receives just a little bit of flare on the case mouth and the correct neck expansion so that the 9mm bullets can be loaded nicely. So notice the simplicity of the case going in, activating the powder measure as you see. And then the return. the reliable return of the powder measure. All internal, no external connections needed. And once again, there we have the proper amount of expansion and mouth flaring, plus the powder charge. Well, all Lee needs to do is to have a clear hopper, and it's almost like that was made for the Dillon 550B press. Like it belongs with it. In fact, as all Dillon users know, we have a joint here that sometimes gets loose, and that causes some problems with the measure flopping around and rotating on the position there. And also the powder through die can get loose. And then sometimes the linkage, this thing flies off. So those kind of things happen with our Dillon. We learn to live with all that. But look at the Lee powder measure on there. Look how simple it is. Attached nicely there. Those rubber O-rings keep it from getting loose or having a problem. And there's no interference with any of the movement. Like I said, like it belongs there. However, that's all window dressing if we don't get accurate powder throws. Now, we already know that this measure does very well with powders like 296 ball powder or spherical powder, and also the extruded stick powders do well in this. But what about the flake powders? We've had some questions about how does this measure handle unique, this kind of thing. So let's go ahead and find out. So like we did the other day, we're going to measure and throw 5.4 grain charges. We're going to throw 50 of them and then weigh each one in electronic scale made by Hornady and see what kind of accuracy this will throw with the unique powder. Now, one thing I recommend whenever using a powder measure of this type without a full load in the hopper, and that is to throw about 10 charges, maybe even 15 first, and reject those. Just put them back into the hopper to stabilize and settle the powder. And that way you'll get better accuracy of powder charges during the initial stages of your reloading. So shooters and reloaders, what we did, here's our 50 individual charges all weighed separately, and we got 5.42 grains as the average. And remember, we wanted 5.4 grains of unique powder. 5.42 is very acceptable. We did have a couple of 0.6s, 5.6s though. So if you're going to load maximum charges, again, the best thing to do is to weigh the powder charges. But if you're less than maximum, like this load is, we're in business. Now I also did a 10 charge into the pan weight, and that came out at 54.6. So divide by 10, you get 5.46 grains doing it that way. Still very acceptable if we're under maximum loads. So this Lee powder measure, the auto drum powder measure, works very well in progressive presses. I'd be very surprised if this very slim profile wouldn't go into any press, progressive press that you might have. And with the easy connections here, secure, there was no budging or motion of this powder measure through the whole 60 charge test that we just did. It's just singing right along. So another good thing is you can actually see this if you leave the key in the drum. It's like a little flag that goes back and forth. Removing the disconnector works very well in the 550B because the powder measure is only activated if there's a case going into the die. If there's no case, no powder. And if we index the shell platform every time we run it, no double charges. That requires that the operator pay attention, of course. But even if you had a disconnector on there, you'd have to be hitting that thing all the time. That's quite a bit of attention to do that. Now, one thing, the screw that is in this hole, when you take the disconnector out, that screw needs to be replaced in the screw back here. That keeps this lever from slipping off, and then if that does slip over to this position over here, it won't drop a powder charge. So with the screw in place there, then that won't happen. And this becomes a very reliable thrower of powder charges. So shooters and reloaders out there, we now have another option for a press-mounted powder measure that is accurate, convenient, well-made, sturdy, and has quick interchangeable drums that you can preset. By the way, you can use a pencil to indicate what load is being thrown by this drum on this little flat surface here. So I'm going to go ahead and place an order for extra drums. They're not expensive, and we'll go from there. Take care. See you next video. Bye for now.